We know that this isn't our church. The church is your people. And Jesus is the head. And it's a building, Lord. And we know that, even though it may have surprised us, may have shocked us, but it didn't shock you, Lord. So we know that that's why we can lean on you and say, not our own understanding. This is just a small little speed bump. And it will all be taken care of. We'll be sitting in, God willing, nice, brand new, lots of things. So, Father God, we just put that in your hands. We're going to put that out of our mind and grab onto that peace that comes from knowing you and you alone. So we ask these things in Jesus' name. Maverick, are we good? We're going?
Don't sound like it.
All right. So we're going. Okay, so we're going to do 2 chapters tonight. We don't finish, and we'll just do the next one. What I will do in the future is I'll get you guys some study guides like I did previously. I'm still trying to figure out how to print off this computer. I'm having my challenges. My person in charge of tech is in Florida. So I'm going to go get her. Okay, so as you can see, I've got the page listed and where the paragraph is. Okay. So who would like to read for us? Diane, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
As the earth came forth from the hand of its...
As loud as you can. Well, not as loud as you can.
Okay.
Like you were speaking to Mitch and you were having to correct it.
As the earth came forth from the hand of its maker, it was exceedingly beautiful. Its surface was diversified with mountains, hills, and plains, interspersed with noble rivers and lovely lakes. But the hills and mountains were not abrupt and rugged, abounding in terrific steeps and frightful chasms, as they do now. The sharp, ragged edges of Earth's rocky framework were buried beneath the fruitful soil, which everywhere produced a luxuriant growth of verdure. There were no loathsome swamps or barren deserts. Graceful shrubs and delicate flowers greeted the eye at every turn.
Okay, that was the condition of the earth. And we would call that pre-sin, but even more so pre-flood. Okay? So what happened in the flood? What happened to the earth in the flood?
It got full of water.
Full of water? What else does it say? Did it just rain?
No, it came down and it came up
It
also.
says the waters of the deep were broken up, right? So, you can only imagine what that might have meant, right? There might have been great boulders cast up into the sky to come down and do their damage. And then as the ground was raised up, that's what gives us a jagged, what she's talking about here, jagged mountains and, terrific steeps and things like that. They have found fossils of fish on top of mountains, which is totally opposite of the theory of evolution. Because the theory of evolution tells you everything's wearing down. How would sea animals, fossils, get on top of a mountain? Makes more sense if the mountain came up and through that, right? But it's still sitting up there. So it couldn't have been sitting up there for millions of years because erosion would have eroded it away, right? So we have much evidence to place our faith on, but it still needs to be faith. So I want to stand on the Word of God. How about you? Okay. Bill, do you want to read for us?
I might not know some of the words. What you want me to read?
Just this here.
The top one or the bottom one?
All of it?
The whole thing?
Yep. Go ahead and read at least for the top one. Read that top one. So this is a question.
When did Adam come down into being of creation story?
So when did Adam come into being? When was he created? Go ahead.
After the earth, with its steaming animal and vegetable life, had been called into existence, man, the crowning work of the Creator, and the one for whom the beautiful earth had been fitted for, was brought up into stage of action.
Mm-hmm. He was brought upon the stage of action. Is that biblical?
Yes.
Yes, it was. Right? He was to be a king. Right? He was the ruler. And Sharon, do you want to read for us? Or would you like someone else to?
No, what?
Can you read for us? Kind of a little bit of your loud voice right there, the second part.
Okay.
You want to read right here, then?
To him.
Just read right
all
here.
Right. To him was given dominion over all that his eye could behold. For God said, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over all the earth,
So God created man in his own image, male and female created he them.
How much controversy is in what's said? God said, let us make man in our image. Is there controversy over that?
Yes.
Do the Jews believe in our image,
No.
in our likeness? No, they have a problem with that. But we see evidence of what? The Trinity,
Godhead.
right? The Godhead, what it said. And then how about the rest of it? It says, so God created man in his own image. Male and female created he them.
Nope, that's a big.
Man has created people that say, don't refer to me as male or female, refer to me as them. Is that correct?
No.
No, it's not. You know, there's a lot of confusion. The Bible calls it confusion, and well said, it doesn't call it confusion, because that's what there is today. A lot of it. So, in the beginning, he made the male and female. Everything he made, male and female. Even that is under attack. Everything in the book of Genesis is under attack today. Amen?
The psalmist says, Thou madest him to have dominion over the works of thy hands. Thou hast put all things under his feet, the beasts of the field, the fowl of the air, and whatsoever passeth through the paths of seas. Psalm 8, verses 6 through 8.
So God made this planet. Did Adam and Eve see him make it?
No.
No. Even then, it took faith, didn't it? And that's isn't that interesting. They had to have faith. We just say so.
But we're going to be able to watch him recreate.
Recreated, yeah, I think we will too. So they were created, and then probably for the first time I made this connection in my own mind. What does Jesus say in John 14:3? Then the read that for us.
And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you unto myself, that where I am, there ye may also be.
So he's gone and prepared another place for you. Have you seen what he's done there?
Nope.
No. When you get there, what are you going to have to do? You're going to have to accept it by faith because he said it. Isn't that interesting? And you had this repeated when the Israelites went into the promised land. He said, you're going to inhabit cities you didn't build. You're going to eat from vineyards you didn't plant. So God has a habit of doing this, preparing a place for us, right? And then Vicky?
Why is the appetite, passion, and reason so connected to unfallen man? Man was to bear God's image, both in outward resemblance and in character.
Speak up just a little bit. Just so.
Christ alone is the express image of the Father, but man was formed in the likeness of God. His nature was in harmony with the will of God. His mind was capable of comprehending divine things. His actions were pure, his appetites and passions were under the control of reason. He was holy and happy in bearing the image of God and in perfect obedience to his will.
The question is, why is appetite, passion, and reason so connected to unfallen man?
Because it was controlled by reason.
Yeah. And even reason we have twisted today. You know, once you get disconnected from the creation story and you're not recognizing a creator, you become wise in your own sight, which was part of the first lie, right? You shall be as gods. So then reason starts becoming subjective to whatever you think. You know, and often that's the case. There was an age, and it was called the age of reason. And along with that came in an age of great apostasy, where after the Protestant Reformation, the age of reason came in. And then they started questioning the existence of God. They came up and they refined the theory of evolution and so on and so forth. And we have a disaster that's followed since. Reason has led to, if it feels good, just do it. If it's right for you, and relativism, all that has become as a result of an age of reason. Elizabeth, do you want to read for us?
How was the physical appearance of the pair described, and how were they clothed? As man came forth from the hand of his Creator, he was of lofty stature and perfect symmetry. His countenance bore the ruddy tint of health and glowed with the light of life and joy. Adam's height was much greater than that of men who now inhabit the earth. Eve was somewhat less in stature, yet her form was noble and full of beauty. The sinless pair wore no artificial garments. They were clothed with a covering of light and glory, such as the angels wear. So long as they lived in obedience to God, this realm of light continued to enshroud them.
Okay. Now, we don't have a biblical record that comes right out and says that. But what does the Bible say? What did they realize after they sinned? Yeah. So does that mean the clothes that they were wearing fell off? They tore them? So what happened?
They were so connected with God, like the angels, that they
had a roll of light.
right.
I mean, it's logical when you follow the Bible. It's logical when you follow the Bible. You know, they lost it. And that, Jesus tells a parable of the wedding feast, right? And yeah, these robes that are given out, are those actual physical robes? Or, it represents Christ's righteousness, and God is light. It's really interesting when you start looking at these things. So this makes perfect sense when you look at the Bible in its totality and understand that every time an angel appears, when they appeared to those shepherds, what did they appear like? Great light. They were like,
right.
wow, and even Daniel, and how about
John.
Saul?
Yeah.
He was blinded by that light. He beheld it, right? So this is very biblical, but it takes an understanding to kind of see what's going on here, right? Because otherwise, what did they lose? There is no physical garment described. It was something that the eyes of us cannot see yet, right? Cannot behold. They lost it, right? God is a consuming fire, One day we will behold it because we will be as Him. We'll have those robes of light there. Moses, when he talked to God, would come out of there, and what was going on with Moses?
His face was
He was
shining.
glowing. He was shining. And it would last for quite a while, and he had to wear a veil, right? Because he was seeing God. And yet Moses never saw God face to face. He asked to see God. And he put him in the cleft of a rock. And he said, you can only see my backside. And Moses, humble, most humble man there ever was, who definitely had asked for forgiveness of whatever sins was going in his life, could still only see God's backside. And then he revealed something to him. Then he spoke. And he get speaking to him his character, his law. Because that perfection, that purity, is what gives God that burning fire. Which when you're pure, you can walk upon with stones of fire. All these things, everything I'm saying to you guys is biblical. That's why when you look at this, it makes sense. When you dig, you're looking, you dig for treasure. You'll find these things in the Bible and go, wow, that makes perfect sense. They lost their righteousness that Lucifer himself lost. But yet Lucifer, I was thinking about this today as I was rereading this. He can still appear like some magnificent being that we have never beheld. And I'm sure he's worked on trying to recreate the light that he's lost. Right? Just some thoughts I have. Okay, Malcolm?
Sure. Is man designed for solitude? How and who created Adam's companion and for what purpose? God himself gave Adam a companion. He provided and helped meet for him.
Yep.
A helper corresponding to him. One who was fitted to be his companion and who could be one with him in love and sympathy. Eve was created from a rib taken from the side of Adam, signifying that she was not to control him as the head. I got lost the line. Nor to be trampled under his feet as an inferior, but to stand by his side as an equal, to be loved and protected by him. A part of man, bone of his bone, flesh of his flesh, she was his second self, showing the close union and affection and attachment that should exist in this relation.
Somebody's phone's ringing.
Sorry.
It's all right. You can just turn it on silent. Good. So a part of man, a bone of bone. Today I visited Perry Perkle, who some of you may know. Perry just lost his wife. He was married to for 52 years.
Oh my goodness.
52 years of marriage.
Oh wow.
What do you think he's feeling right now? He can't.
Indescribable.
He can't hardly talk. It breaks down into tears. It's so close. So he has lost a part of him. Okay, that wasn't 52 years of marriage of hell, which for some people it has been 52 years of marriage of hell. It's 52 years of marriage of, I'm sure, moments of hell, but lots of heaven. Because they stayed together because they love one another. So they captured a little bit of that, right? What did Jesus refers back to? It says in the beginning, man shall leave his mother and father. Right? So it's not good that man should be by himself. And we need, man and woman We have different qualities. We need each other. Okay, I'll read this one. What institution was given that man brought with him after losing the paradise of Eden? And when was man expected to begin observing the seventh-day Sabbath? Well, that's a loaded question. Okay, so let's read here. God celebrated the first marriage. That's one institution. Thus, the institution has for its originator who? The creator of the universe. Marriage is honorable. Hebrews 13:4. It was one of the first gifts of God to man. And it was one of the two institutions that after the fall, Adam brought with him beyond the gates of paradise. When the divine principles are recognized and obeyed in this relation, marriage is a blessing. It guards the purity and happiness of the race. It provides for man's social needs. It elevates the physical, the intellectual, and the moral nature. I think the second question might be answered in the next one. So what is marriage for? What does it do?
Guards purity and happiness.
Yep. Happiness of the race.
Like it said in the first slide, man was not created to be an island, so it gives him, like like in Judy and Harry, it's like they were together and they became one,
Right.
but they were still separate. They still had that interaction.
Do we see a little bit of a typology of the Godhead,
Right, yeah,
where Jesus and the Father are one, but they're not the same,
right.
right? They're the same in mind, but it wouldn't be that big a deal if God said, God so loved the world that he gave himself. It's easier to sacrifice yourself than it is to sacrifice someone you love.
Right.
And he did that. He sacrificed somebody he loved. Now, he risked, and this is important for us to understand, Jesus risked his existence. Because when he came man, he was under the law just like we are. The Bible says it's impossible that God can be tempted, but Jesus became a man. If Jesus would have sinned, he would have been lost, just like Adam and Eve was lost, and then who would have been? It would have been over. He would have been lost. So, let's see, I don't know if I might have missed a question here, but we'll see, we'll go a little farther and we'll talk about it. Okay, we're back to this.
What is the importance of this statement? God made them free moral agents, capable of appreciating the wisdom and benevolence of his character and the justice of his requirements, and with full liberty to yield or to withhold obedience.
So what's the importance of that?
We're not robots, we have.
They have free will.
Free will, yeah. Satan had free will, right?
Right.
I was thinking about this today. God sees everything, right? So, and this is something that we often wrestle with, okay? So God sees everything. I see my cell phone, so I'm going to make sure mine's on silent. And while it is. He saw what Adam and Eve would do. He knew it would happen. But he didn't make it happen. He saw what Lucifer would do, but he didn't make it happen. That's the risk you take. Okay? What's cool is the first time I really, really thought about it. He knows that we will never choose sin again. Not because we can't, but because we won't. He knows that too. For those of us that get to go to heaven, hopefully all of us here, he knows we will never choose it again. Not because we can't, but because we won't. Our free choice. He sees that future. He knows that sin will end. And that's what this great controversy has been all about. Okay, this was part of the second question that was in the one. So, nice and loud, Bill, go ahead and read it.
After resting
Read that
upon the
question.
seventh day,
Read that question.
the top one,
Yep.
when did God make the seventh day Sabbath and when was it sanctified?
Okay, so pay attention. When did God make the seventh-day Sabbath? And when was it sanctified?
When he rested.
Read it.
Sir? Oh. After resting upon the seventh day, God sanctified it or set it apart as a day of rest for man. Following the example of the Creator, man was to rest upon the sacred day, that as he should look upon the heavens and the earth, he might reflect upon God's great work of creation. and that as he should behold the evidence of God's wisdom and goodness, his heart might be filled with love and reverence for his Maker.
When someone comes to you and they say there was no command in the beginning that man should keep Sabbath, they are correct. We do not have a command in the beginning. We have an example. When was the Sabbath made? When?
After resting and Sunday.
Seventh day.
No. After the seventh day. This is important for you to understand. After the seventh day. After resting upon the seventh day. So now it's over, right? Yeah. This part of the Bible is about God. God did. God spoke, and it was so. Right? God said it was good. God said it was very good. It's all about God, right? So it couldn't be made holy. It couldn't be made until God rested. And then he said, therefore, keep it. Remember the Sabbath, where God made the heavens and the earth, and he rested, okay, past tense, therefore, you see the difference? So it's good for that to sink into your head, because you might have someone challenge you someday on it, but there was an example here. So I promise you, 7 days later, they were resting on the seventh day. Because otherwise, why was it made to begin with? And Jesus himself says the Sabbath was made for the Jew.
No,
No.
it's made for man.
He said it was made for man. He says it in 3 of the Gospels. It explicitly says Sabbath was made for man. Okay? But it's one of those interesting things. It's a hidden treasure to realize, wait a minute, it couldn't be blessed and it couldn't be made holy until God himself had performed this final act of rest. All right, Sharon, you want to read for us? Read the question and
Okay. Where was the tree of knowledge of good and evil in relationship to the tree of life? And why were they placed so? Was Adam under the law?
Okay. Go ahead and read the rest.
Oh, don't read.
Go ahead and read
Tree
this.
of knowledge which stood near the tree of life in the midst of the garden was to be a test of the obedience, faith, and love of our parents. God placed man under law as an indispensable condition of his very existence. He was a subject of the divine government, and there can be no government without law. God might have created man without the power to transgress his law. He might have withheld the hand of Abraham from touching the forbidden fruit, but in that case, man would have been not a free moral agent, but a mere automation.
Yeah, very good. Automaton. It's actually automaton, which is a robot, or automation, same thing.
Right.
So he places the tree of knowledge right next to the tree of life. Isn't that interesting?
So it's not as, I guess what I thought was, here was one tree, and he was so busy doing the work that
Yeah, well, and it
he
says
drifted,
close. I mean,
but,
if,
right, but how
yeah.
close is close?
Right, how
But
close
when
is
you're
close.
thinking about it,
Yeah.
you know, the way I understood it, it looked,
Yeah.
it was like a long, you know.
Yeah,
quite
and it came through that
distance.
way. But you know, the whole world was beautiful, yet there was this garden. So
Right.
somewhere in that garden, so they're sharing the same garden.
Right.
Like being in the same house. You know, I still remember there was a kid's cartoon. It was, I even remember it. It was Ren and Stimpy, of all things. But the one says to the other one, "Don't touch that red button." And then he walks out of the room and it's just, it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger.
Right.
And that's sort of, you know, what happens to us.
Exactly.
Don't touch that. We end up touching it, right? You know, hot. You know, how many of us knew it was hot before we touched it?
Yep.
Unfortunately, most times we got touched it. But, you know, it says here, God placed man, was Adam under the law? Yes, he was under the law, wasn't he? And this is another way where it says, you know, he was subject to the divine government. God placed man under the law as an indispensable condition of his very existence. Another way of saying that, Jesus said, if you love me,
Keep my commandments.
keep my commandments. This was a simple commandment. I don't know if I put it in there. I hope I did. I reread the chapters today, but I did this a while back. So I don't want to miss this. If we repeat it, that's fine. If I pull the cord out, it basically says, you know, some will look at this and say, you know, and even Adam and Eve, you know, it's such a simple test. How can all this bad stuff happen from such a simple test? But what really you derive from that is if you can't obey the simple, how can you obey the more? If I can't trust you with a little, how can I trust you with a lot, right? Remember God, you know, Jesus tells a parable of coins, right? There's one coin, another 2 coins, another 4 coins or whatever, and they all go out, but the one hides it, right? You know, and it's sort of a similar thing here. But if you can't trust you with a little, or if we go to the book of Daniel, we see 3 real stories embedded with 3 major prophecies, right? The prophecy being the king has his vision, right? And then Daniel gets 2 visions. But then the stories are, what's the very first test? What was the very first test?
Interpreting it. No,
king's food. It was the food. And if it was the food, they were sitting at the king's table where everything was available to them. The finest wine. Right? And you even have people, historians looking back saying, well, you know, they often drink wine because the water wasn't safe. You know? And you know what? And, you know, I can even fall for that. But yet they only wanted water and they wanted vegetables. You know, there was just too much on that plate that they knew wasn't good for them. Some of it God prohibited, and then probably just stuff that I like cake and cookies and candy and chocolate. You know, there might have been a lot of that there too, but they said no. And then they went on to the next, more severe test, where Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they would not bow. Right? But had they not passed that first test, would they have even, well, we had that other chapter recorded. Probably would never got there. Right? And then the same thing with Daniel when he said, no, I will pray. I will pray. All right, Lynn.
How is man to occupy his time, and what type of intellect was given to Adam and Eve? The true joy of life is found only by the working men and women. The angels are diligent workers. They are the ministers of God to the children of men. The Creator has prepared no place for a stagnating practice of indolence.
And pause right there. Now, how many of you have heard? Because the devil takes everything that God has done and wants to turn it upside down. Right? Remember, you're going to have a comment?
No, I knew we were going.
So, you know, and today, what is one of the things that they're wanting to force on people? And they're doing it, and they're doing it in St. Louis a little bit, and they're doing it in California. They call it, I just said the name, universal basic income. You heard of that? Universal basic income means you get a check. Social Security is a check, right? At least you put some money in Social Security, right? But universal basic income is the idea behind it is that we're going to be able to automate everything. And you won't have to do anything. If those of you who have heard of the World Economic Forum, if you haven't heard of it, you know, I'm sorry that you haven't heard of it. It's very powerful. They're embedded in the UN right now. They meet with every world leader there is. And that's their dream. And they say, by 2030, you're going to own nothing, and you're going to be happy. Now, for some of you, I did a little thing on the Mouse Utopia. They did the experiment, and they gave mice, they put them in an area, and they had everything they needed. They had all the food they needed and no predators. And the population exploded at first, and then they started having problems. They started turning violent on each other. So they created a city for mice, where there was everything they needed, which is what they're telling us, right? And, you know, you're going to own nothing, and you're going to be happy, and you're going to have everything you want. You're not going to have to work. You're just going to get a check, because everything's going to be provided for you. What will be the outcome of that? Well, for the mice, they started turning on each other, they became violent. The population started collapsing because they became homosexual, and they weren't interested in that. They had food over here and food over here, but they would congregate here and form little tribes, and they would ignore the food over here. Really crazy stuff. And eventually, the last generation of them were, they call them the beautiful ones, because all they were interested in was living by themselves. It's not good to be by yourself, right? And they were infatuated with grooming themselves. In the sermon, I had a little picture of it, and I called it the selfie generation. They were going there. We're going there. They did these experiments, and it was very much well known at the time in the 60s. And yet, that's the direction the UN and different organizations are pushing this. They want control. You know, I could go on about that, but it won't end well. So man needs to work. There's a good, it's not in the Bible, but it's there, but it's not there in the words. Idle hands is the
Devil's workshop.
yeah. I heard it's a playground. It's a workshop.
Yeah, it
So-
says if you don't work, you go hungry.
That's
Yep.
it.
We have an example of a city that was well funded. Lots of time on their hand. What's that city called in the Bible? It would be called Sodom. And in Sodom, they had a gang of homosexuals that wanted to rape angels. Is that true or false?
Yes.
It's very true. That's what happens when you have everything you need and you just start thinking up things for your own pleasure. You twist your pleasure.
We're even going to be working in heaven, so
Yeah, right. You'll be
it's got to be
tending,
good for us.
you'll be tending things, right? You know, amen. When you come back to this earth, you're going to be working, right? The angels work, right? That's what's being said, right? So go to read paragraph 2.
So as long as they remain loyal to the divine law, their capacity to know, to enjoy, and to love would continually increase. They would be constantly gaining new treasures of knowledge, discovering fresh springs of happiness, and obtaining clearer and yet clearer conceptions of the immeasurable, unfailing love of God.
So, you know, even today, we can get fascinated by watching the Discovery Channel or something when it's just talking about nature. But there's nothing like getting out and putting your hands in the soil. There's a therapy to that. And there's actually, you know, minerals and different things that you get, you know, stuff that helps us to actually thrive better, right? You know, it's a shame that, you know, one of the things that is talked about in the chapter, and it's true too, when you go into a city, it's a concrete jungle. You ever hear that? And, you know, but there's something about nature that makes people more relaxed. But in the city, you have all those, you know, you have an absence of God inside, you know. And where's all the crime at?
In the cities.
In the cities.
It's everywhere now.
Yeah. So we're moving on to chapter 3, which is the temptation and the fall. And it did pretty good here. I think we started with 736. Okay, so we're on chapter 3 now. And Vicki, I believe it's your turn.
But while everything in nature is governed by natural laws, man alone, of all that inhabits the earth, is amendable to moral law. To man, the crowning work of creation, God has given power to understand his requirements, to comprehend the justice and beneficence of his law and its sacred claims upon them, and of man unswerving obedience is required.
I don't believe it was written by a woman that only had a 3rd grade education. Here we are, we struggle with some of the words, right? I mean, I do too. You know, we struggle pronouncing because, you know, they're powerful words. So, man, again, it's going on his crown work. What does he have? He has the ability to comprehend and understand God's laws.
What was the purpose of the tree of knowledge? The tree of knowledge has been made a test of their obedience and their love to God. The Lord has seen fit to lay upon them but one prohibition as to the use of all that was in the garden. But if they should disregard his will in this particular, they would incur the guilt of transgression. Satan was not to follow them with continual temptations. He could have access to them only at the forbidden tree. Should they attempt to investigate its nature, they would be exposed to his wiles. They were admonished to give careful heed to the warning which God had sent them, and to be content with the instruction which he had seen fit to impart.
So I would say, when it says, should they attempt to investigate its nature? I was in St. Charles today visiting Harry and Judy, and I was driving down 5th Street, I think it was. And on the side they had a little building. Come have your poem read. You know, there's another one here, I know it's going to St. Peter's down there, close to Mid Rivers Drive. It's on the south side, the north side of the highway. And, you know, it's another, that's been there a while, by the little used car lot, you know what I'm talking about?
Quick Trip.
Yep, there's a Quick Trip. You know, and it's always kind of funny. It's like, well, if you could read the future, how come you don't have a nicer place? You know, a bigger building for your business.
Yeah, the lottery numbers.
Yeah. Why don't you, you give me your lottery ticket, we'll share it. You know, just It's just silly, you know, but people chase it. And many times it's out of a curiosity, right? It's out of a fancifulness. It's out of just, okay, let's just see. I don't even believe it. But what is believing? Seeing is believing. So when people often are good, this happens in the Bible too. People will come at the Bible, they don't believe it, maybe they're trying to prove it wrong, and once they start reading it, they have a conversion. Well, the same thing can happen when you start dabbling in evil, right? Now, today we have a knowledge of good and evil. So what I'm talking about is not so much understanding the evil as it is watching, don't go into it taking a bite out of it, or whatever food it was. All right, whose turn? Malcolm? Can you read that?
In order to accomplish his work unperceived, Satan chose to employ his medium, the serpent, a disguise well adapted for his purpose of deception. The serpent was then one of the wisest and most beautiful creatures on the earth. It had wings, and while flying through the air, presented an appearance of a dazzling brightness, having the color and brilliancy of burnished gold. Resting the rich laden branches of the forbidden tree and regaling itself with its delicious fruit, it was an object to arrest the attention and delight the eye of the beholder. Thus, in the garden of peace, lurked the destroyer, watching for his prey.
So I put in here, does anybody know what this is? Picture doesn't show up so well here, but do you know what that is? What is a snake with wings?
Dragon.
A dragon. Now that curse on that serpent was the what? Crawl on its belly. Right? Which makes you think, well, it either had legs or it had wings, or both, because the dragon has feet too. And the world seems to be fascinated with dragons. All the religions. What religion is this? That's Catholicism. That's their seal. It's one, or crest. It's one of the crests. And now you can't see it real good again because I'm taking these pictures out here. You can see it great here. But those are the keys of Peter. Keys to heaven, keys to hell. And that's the triple crown. Ruler of Hades, hell, earth, and heaven. That's what that's saying. Picture's worth 1,000 words. So that's what it's saying. That's serpent language. You shall be as gods. And the head of that church takes it literally, right? I've become a god on earth. I'm the vicar of Christ. That's what's going on. But just don't take my word for it. Let's look a little closer. You think they like dragons? You think they like snakes? This is all Catholic, Vatican mostly imagery. Here they invited another god into the Vatican. That's a real picture. It's a god, some other god, but it's a foreign god. But you know what? It's subservient to this god. That god. So it's okay to bring it in. If you look in all the ancient Aztecs and the Mayans and the Egyptians, they all had it. So you're going to see quite a few pictures. It's everywhere. So it comes right out of the garden.
You should have that picture of that place where they have the public
Yeah,
gatherings.
no, I didn't do that. But I've shown this church that a couple of times.
Yeah.
Which is pretty amazing. And he's talking about the snake building. All right, whose turn is it to read? Back to Diane?
The angels had cautioned Eve to be aware of separating herself from her husband while occupied in her daily labor in the garden. With him, she would be in less danger from temptation than if she were alone. But absorbed in her pleasing task, she unconsciously wandered from his side. On perceiving that she was alone, she felt an apprehension of danger, but dismissed her fears, deciding that she had sufficient wisdom and strength to discern evil and to withstand it. Unmindful of the angel's caution, she soon found herself gazing with mingled curiosity and admiration upon the forbidden tree. The fruit was very beautiful, and she questioned with herself why God had withheld it from them now. Now was the tempter's opportunity. As if he were able to discern the workings of her mind, he addressed her. Yea, hath God said, ye shall not eat of every tree of the garden.
And the answer is, none of us here are mind readers, but we can read expressions sometimes, right? Sometimes we misread. But Satan was there and he was waiting. He did not come as an angel. You know, so, and he does that to us over and over in different ways. So this one is continued. So go ahead and continue that for us.
Eve was surprised and startled as she thus seemed to hear the echo of her thoughts. But the serpent continued in a musical voice, with subtle praise of her surpassing loveliness, and his words were not displeasing. Instead of fleeing from the spot, she lingered wonderingly to hear a serpent speak. Had she been addressed by a being like the angels, her fears would have been excited, but she had no thought of that the fascinating serpent could become the medium of the fallen foe.
It says he spoke with a melodious voice. When he appears as Jesus, he's going to use that same voice. He's going to talk the talk, but he's not going to walk the walk. He's going to quote Bible verses just like he did to Jesus in the temptation wilderness. And his voice is going to be the voice of many waters, or at least the closest we've ever heard to. All right, Bill?
And the serpent said unto the woman, Ye shall not surely die, for God doth know that in the day ye eat thereof, then your eyes shall be opened, and ye shall be as gods, knowing good and evil. Paragraph 1, by partaking of this tree, he declared they would obtain to a more exalted sphere of existence and enter in a broader field of knowledge. He himself had eaten of the forbidden fruit, and as a result had required the power of speech, and he insinuated that the Lord jealously desired to withhold it from them, lest they should be exalted to equity with himself.
Equality with himself. So here we got, again, different religions, right? This is South America. They were worshiping what? Right there in their worship was serpents, right? And I forgot to go back here. What symbol is this? Medical symbol. And then what is that symbol? What does it stand for? What do they say? They know where it comes from. They trace this back to Asclepius, which was the Roman Greek god of healing. He died and he was resurrected, and he had the power of health. They get that right out of there. It's also the symbol of Mercury, who was really the symbol of one snake. You'll see it sometimes just in one snake. I think this one's from the UN. Yeah, it's the UN. See the globe? Okay. So the god Asclepius had one snake, and he was the god of medicine. Did that god of medicine shut us down this year? Or, well, 2 years ago, he shut the world down, right? This was the symbol actually of Mercury, which was the god of commerce and communication. And he was also the god of, he was the god of communication and the god of merchandise. So when the medical shut us down, who got richer? The big commerce people, right? The big corporations, they got a lot richer. They benefited from one doing the other, right? And how about communication? You know, a lot of censorship going on today? Yeah. So these symbols, all their symbols, the power that they represent is going on very much so today. Is that another part of the world that's still fascinated with snakes? Think they have power? All right, who's turn? Sharon. Sharon, would you read for us?
Okay. Eve really believed the words.
She really believed. There's a difference between Eve and Adam. Go ahead.
Okay. The words of Satan, but her belief did not save her from the penalty of sin. She disbelieved the words of God, and this was what led to her fall. In the judgment, men will not be condemned because they conscientiously believed a lie, but because they did not believe the truth, because
Deep.
they...
That's deep. There won't be what you just read there. Said, judgment says they consciously believed a lie. They won't be condemned because of that reason, but because they did not believe the truth. What sets you free? The truth. You believe the truth, you can attack the lies. Go ahead and finish. I'm sorry. That's just a deep deep thought you shared with us.
Right. Okay. Where do you want me to read from?
Why don't you go ahead and start over again, since I really go right there.
Okay, and this was what led to her fall. In the judgment, men will not be condemned because they conscientiously believed a lie, but because they did not believe the truth, because they neglected the opportunity of learning what is truth.
So, I hope you're seeing how much the book of Genesis has an effect on everything, because she's connecting it up with, in the judgment, men and women, in the judgment, it's going to be similar to what happened here. Right? And Eve was deceived, right? And Jesus in Matthew 24, when they said, "What will be the sign of your coming?" Right? He said, first words out of my mouth, "Be careful you are not deceived." Right? Because that's not gonna save you to say, "Hey, I was tricked." You know, because the truth is there. If you had the truth as well, you shouldn't have fell for the trick.
Well, I think another part that makes it even deeper is that they neglected the opportunity to learn what the truth is. And that's, you're going to be held accountable for, it was right there,
Yeah.
and you were told why, should have sought it out.
I got a piece of
An expression of sadness came over the face of Adam. He appeared astonished and alarmed. To the words of Eve, he replied that this must be the foe against whom they had been warned, and by the divine sentence she must die. Adam understood that his companion had transgressed the command of God and disregarded the only prohibition laid upon them as a test of their fidelity and love. He looked upon the glory of the Creator. He understood the high destiny open to the human race should they remain faithful to God. Yet all these blessings were lost sight of in fear of losing that one gift in which his eyes outvalued every other. Love, gratitude, loyalty to the Creator were all overborne by love to Eve. She was a part of himself, and he could not endure the thought of separation. He did not realize that the same infinite power who had from the dust of the earth created him a living, beautiful form and had in love given him a companion could supply her place.
You see that repeated in the Bible. What happened to Solomon? Had lots of them.
Yep.
But Samson, did a woman bring him down?
Yep, big time.
And then also David, by looking at Bathsheba.
Mm-hmm.
And there was one more, and it just slipped my mind who it was. There was one more. I can't think who it was. But where's your trust at? Where's your loyalty at? Said, King Herod.
Yep.
King Herod with Salome. Right? She was wicked, and he let his love for her steal away from his brother. Right? And then he ignored John the Baptist to the point where he honored her daughter's wish over what he knew was true, and he took the head of John the Baptist, basically sealing his fate. Right? So were you going to say something, Malcolm?
I was just wondering, I've never, I've heard about Lilith, that she was in the Garden of Eden. I've never read that anywhere in the
That's
Bible.
not in the Bible.
Okay,
It's not in
so
the
that's
Bible.
just
That's
is
just
that
a-
the Gnostic scripts? or
That's a
something?
pagan, it's a lie.
Actually, I think it's Hebrew. I think it's a Jewish story.
Yeah.
Is it a Jewish story?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was thinking of her too, and I've looked into that before myself.
Yeah.
Read up on her. It's just,
So, I
I
saw
did
something on it,
too,
and I looked it up.
I
Yeah.
did look it up, and
and
it's
basically it's a modern feminist.
it's like
Yeah, it is.
Jewish.
Yeah, well, they have
folktales or
that
something.
big women's concert, Lilith Fair, or
Yeah,
whatever.
that's what it is. That's what it is. So, and if you read this book, Adam and Eve were beginning to be equal in the sense of a shared position of power. I don't know how to word it where it sounds right, okay? But she came out of the side, right? Now they still weren't equal in abilities necessarily, right? Men can do things that women can do, women can do things that men can't do, right? Adam wasn't going to bear children. He never was, and he never will, right? Eve can do that. And there's a little bit different in the nature, but they were made for one another. Then after the fall, what happened?
He became over her.
Right. Now, men abuse that position, right? Was that position changed at the cross?
Yeah. Like,
No, it wasn't. It wasn't. Even the Bible even tells you that man is the head of woman, and Christ is the head of
I would not like to
man.
hear that, but no.
Right. Right. And, you know, but man still abuses that privilege at one time. Now, man abuses the authority. What does woman do? She revolts against the authority. Right? Man abuses it. Woman revolts against it. Now, every once in a while, maybe Perry and Judy had it, right? Where it's working, and it's working good. 52 years. All right? You know, so people do capture it, right? But that, you know, but even just the thought of saying that, it makes the hair on a woman's back to maybe stand up a bit, right? Right? It probably would me, you know, and it does because I don't want to listen to God. I'm my own man, right? That's what's in our nature, okay? And I've said it before, I want to say it again because I want this to stick in your mind. Because I didn't learn this till maybe a year and a half ago, and it was a jaw-dropping for me. At the very beginning of the womanist, feminist movement in the 1800s, you know what year it started, really started picking up steam?
It's still 1844.
Yes. Did you know that, or you just guessing?
I'm
Good
guessing.
guess.
Okay, well, that's a good guess. It was a good guess, because it was at the same time that the rapping started. The Fox sisters. What were the Fox sisters famous for? Talking to the dead.
never heard of her.
Right down the street. It's in the Great Controversy, you probably just don't remember. Right down, because it was the introduction into modern spiritualism. So when God was coming out with a church that was going to return to many things, keeping, starting the state, the Sabbath. Why was it so important? Because evolution was coming out at the same time. Satan started pushing. We don't need to look at any of this. It didn't happen this way. Right? It's got what church tells you. Satan's representative on earth, like Christ is God's representative, his representative is the office of the Pope. They tell you that creation is just a myth. They teach you lessons, but it's not true. They openly say, last 3 popes I know for sure have said that. They don't have a problem with evolution. You know why they don't have a problem with it? Because what they do have a problem with is the Bible. And if they get you to say, start questioning part of the Bible, you can start picking and choosing what fits. It's called relativism. Right? And they can raise tradition up over the Bible. So where was it? I don't remember. Oh, feminism. The Fox sisters. Right down the street from the Fox sisters, there was another movement going on, and this was men and women. They were getting around. I cannot remember. It's called a certain table. This table today sits in the Smithsonian Institute because these men and women that got around it, they started talking. It was the feminist movement, and they started talking to the dead. Right at the inception of feminism. It's not that feminism doesn't have some truth to it. Their rights were being trampled on. But Satan gets right in there and takes advantage. First, he causes the people that are abusing them to abuse them. Then he offers you the solution. Along with that solution comes the talking to the dead. What do they have to destroy? If you remember the sermon, family. They come right out and say it. They come right out and say it. The destruction of the family. One of them said women should, this is crazy, right? Because they were all for women's rights. Women should not have a right to choose to be at home with a baby. Because if they have that right, they'll exercise that right. That's psychotic. You're supposed to be fighting for a woman, but you're wanting to take away her choice. But that's the world we live in. So right from the inception, talking to the dead. I'll try to get us through this real quick. Again, what do we see? Another religion, another ancient civilization. That's what the Fox sisters said. After his transgression, Adam at first imagined himself entering upon a higher state of existence, but soon the thought of his sin filled him with terror. The air, which had heretofore been mild and uniform temperature, seemed to chill the guilty pair. The love and peace which had been theirs was gone, and in its place they felt a sense of sin, a dread of the future, a nakedness of soul. The robe of light which had enshrouded them now disappeared, and to supply its place they endeavored to fashion for themselves a covering, for they could not, while unclothed, meet the eye of God and holy angels. So new emotions, fear, shame, guilt, regret, all those were foreign. Genesis 3:9, the Lord God called Adam and said unto him, Where art thou? And he said, I heard thy voice in the garden, and I was afraid. He was never afraid before, because I was naked, and I hid myself. And he said, Who told thee thou was naked? Hast thou eaten of the tree whereof I command thee that thou shouldest not eat? And the man said, The woman whom thou gavest to me, here comes the blame game, she gave me of the tree, and I did eat. The Lord God said unto the woman, what is it that thou hast done? And the woman said, the serpent beguiled me, and I did eat. When the woman was asked, what is it that thou hast done? She answered, the serpent beguiled me, and I did eat. Why didst thou create the serpent? Why didst thou suffer him to enter Eden? These were the questions implied in her excuse for sin. We do this. Thus, like Adam, she charged God with the responsibility of the fall. I do it, right? Somebody does something, I do something wrong, and that's why I did it. I didn't have to do what I did, but I like to blame that person. The spirit of self-justification originated in the father of lies. It was indulged by our first parents as soon as they yielded to the influence of Satan. It has been exhibited by some or all the sons and daughters of Adam. Instead of humbly confessing their sins, they try to shield themselves by casting the blame upon others, upon circumstances, or upon God, making even his blessings on occasion in murmuring against him. Wish I had time to go into that right there. Show you how the Catholic Church does this right here. I will tell you real quick. They will tell you that if in their state, Thomas Aquinas and the popes have ratified this as their belief system today. And you see it being exhibited in the world. They say, if there's two people here, and if this person over here, they don't have anything and this person does, it's not a sin for this person to take from that person. That's circumstances. But they excuse the sin. Meanwhile, what are they doing? Stealing, right? They're breaking the law of God. Because that's ultimately what the serpent wants to do, right? If you want to be like God, what's the main godlike power? It's life, but it's also the ability to write law, because that's what dictates life. The wages of sin is death, right? The law giver is the life giver. And then Satan wants to step in, and he will think to change times and laws. He wants to write that law. So they say that stealing is not a sin if your need is great. And then they go on to give another example, and they say if another person sees these two people, and they see me, my need is great, and this person has, it's not a sin for that person to take from that person to give to me, even secretly. What is that? Who does this third person represent? Anybody know? That would be the government. The government, right? Arbitrary. Does that happen with your taxes? Raise your hand if you want to send all that money to Ukraine. No? You do?
Yeah, why not? I'm not getting it anyway.
Raise your hand if you think it stays in Ukraine. But it's just, but those are something just, taking away and giving, redistribution of wealth. Even the punishment of the beetle serpent. This is something I caught. I'm glad I had this. I never caught this till we did this lesson. So I always learn something. Even the punishment of the beautiful serpent in type shadowing Lucifer, as well as Satan's final destruction. The serpent was the most beautiful of all the creatures. And then it was thrown into the dust to be the lowliest of creatures. What was Satan? The most beautiful of the angels. And he's been cast out. I never caught that before until I did this lesson. I don't know if any of you guys ever saw that before. The Lord then passed sentence upon the serpent. Because thou hast done this, thou art cursed above all the cattle, above every beast of the field. Upon thy belly thou shalt go, and the dust shalt thou eat all the days of thy life. Since it had been employed as Satan's medium, the serpent was to share the visitation of divine judgment. From the most beautiful and admired of the creatures of the field, just like Satan was, Lucifer, it was to become the most groveling and detested of them all, just like Lucifer, feared and hated by both man and beast. The words next addressed to the serpent applied directly to Satan himself, pointed forward to the ultimate defeat and destruction. I will put enmity between thee and the woman, between thy seed and her seed. It shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise his heel. But what have we done? We've made gods out of that creature. It was supposed to be made the lowest and I don't like snakes. I used to have a fear of them. I don't really anymore. But it's amazing because we worship them across the world. The desire shall be to thy husband, and he shall rule over thee. In the creation, God had made her the equal of Adam. And they remained obedient to God in harmony with his great law of love. They would ever have been in harmony with each other. But sin brought discord. And now their union could be maintained and harmony preserved only by submission on the part of one or the other. Had the principles enjoined in the law of God been cherished by the fallen race, this sentence, though growing out of the results of sin, would have proved a blessing to them. But man's abuse of the supremacy thus given him has too often rendered the lot of women very bitter and made her life a burden. Right? That's Satan setting up the rebellion for the woman. Right? But the same thing was repeated when Dathan, Abiram, and Korah revolted against Moses and Aaron. They were jealous because Moses and Aaron had the right to, well, Moses and Aaron, but Moses got to talk to God, right? They wanted that special privilege, but God didn't give it to them. He gave it to a different family, and they were upset about it. Korah, by the way, was a cousin of Moses and Aaron. He was allowed to do different things, but he couldn't do the temple service. He didn't like that.
Sounds very familiar.
It's, yeah, right, exactly what Satan did, right? It's, and he's put this all in us. So a woman is going to be jealous of a man. Man is going to be abusive of a woman, like Satan is abusive to his followers. And it doesn't have to be that way, but it's not supposed to be that way. But if God set it up that way, that's still the perfect plan. A godly man loving the woman as Christ. I have failed over and over to do that. Okay? But, how much is that? Because God gave himself to the church. Jesus gave himself to the church. That's how man should love. Eve had been perfectly happy by her husband's side in Eden's home. But like restless modern Eves, here we go, she was flattered with the hope of entering a higher sphere than that which God had assigned her. In attempting to rise above her original position, she fell far below it. A similar result will be reached by all who are unwilling to take up cheerfully their life duties in accordance with God's plan. There's a Bible verse, you may know it. With contentment is great gain. It's at least it's the old King James New Testament. Godly contentment, godly contentment is great gain. A similar result will be reached by all who are unwilling to take up cheerfully their life duties in accordance with God's plan, and their efforts to reach positions for which He has not fitted them. Many are leaving vacant a place where they might be a blessing. In the desire for a higher sphere, many have sacrificed true womanly dignity and nobility of character, and have left undone the very work that heaven appointed. Is it any wonder why you have so much crime in the city when Satan has managed to tear apart that first institution of marriage? It's torn apart, especially the black community, and we have reaped the world as a result of it. And it was done by design. The warning given to our first parents, in the day that thou eatest thereof, thou shalt surely die, did not imply that they were to die on the very day, and in particular for forbidden fruit, but on that day, the irrevocable sentence will be pronounced. Immortality was promised to them on the condition of obedience. By transgression, they would forfeit eternal life. That very day, they would be doomed to death. Last slide. The tide of woe that flowed from the transgression of our first parents is regarded by many as too awful a consequence, as we were talking about earlier. And they but if they would look more deeply into this question, they might discern the error. God created man after his own likeness, free from sin. The earth was to be people with beings only a little lower than the angels, but their obedience must be tested. For God would not permit the world to be filled with those who would disregard his law. Yet in his great mercy, and the very lightness of the prohibition made the sin exceedingly great. Deep thought. If Adam could not bear the smallest of ten, entrusted with higher responsibilities. Let me see you take care of. No, that's what God was doing there. Satan got in there and did it all. All right, we got through. It's 8:07. I don't think we started till about 10 minutes. So actually, we're gonna next Wednesday we'll meet here again. Okay. There should be. I'll get it out today. I'll get to you and you can send it out in an email. There is next Thursday and Friday is going to be the funeral unless something changes. So Thursday should be the viewing for Judy visitation, and then Friday should be the funeral. So, and Judy specifically told me if it's cold or nasty, she doesn't want anybody at the grave. So don't feel like you have to come back if the weather's bad. You'll probably know more about that on Thursday. Okay?
It's supposed to be raining.
Is it?
Yeah, Friday's supposed to rain or something.
Well, I'm talking next week. So I'm actually flying out to Florida tomorrow. Nancy's out there now. Nancy's out there now. I got to drive her back. So I'll be back here on Tuesday at the latest. Any questions or comments on tonight's study? Hope you enjoyed it. So try to read the next 2 chapters. Okay, that's what I'll try to do. And in the future, I'll try to give it. I'll try to get ahead and be giving you a handout just so you kind of have what was here, so you kind of think about it, and and then if you have a different thought, something jumps out on the page, you don't hesitate. Something, I can't cover it all. I'm trying to hit things that maybe we don't know, pull out some things, and maybe while not missing some of the simple stuff that I don't want to take for granted that people know this. What was, as a matter of fact, as we're here, what made it so bad for Adam to sin?
Was he knew?
He knew. That's right. He knew. He knew. And he knew what he was doing. And he lost that kingship. So, you say something, Bill?
No, it's better.
All right. Well, Father God, I want to thank you, Lord, for this opportunity we had to come together and study your word, to pull out these different things that you would have us know, Lord, to make sense of it. Father, there's a controversy that is going on in this world. And it appears like the devil's winning, but he will lose, Lord. You have said it in your word. You've written it, so it will be so. We thank you for who you are. I ask for a special blessing for Perry and his daughter Amy and granddaughter Neely. May they find comfort in the next few upcoming days and weeks, being absent of wife, mother, and grandmother. And for us, Lord, you're absent friend, but only for a short time. May the short stage of grief be replaced with an exceedingly great, undescribable joy that we're going to have on your joy. We ask all these things in Jesus' name. All right, guys, did you like doing it this way?